Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session on DX at Scale stories. And today we got Nils presenting us, talking us about when click meets code, right? So this is an amazing story where Nils is presenting about his journey and his team's journey on how they've combined DevOps Center, DX at Scale tooling, which is predominantly more towards packaging, and typically told to be very complex on when you combine scratch orgs and modules and a CI/CD pipeline. So here's Nils once again, talking more about that story, how they have used all these tools in combination to provide a very simplified experience to his admin crew working across a couple of projects. So once again, welcome everybody to this session. And I know it's a soccer time here in Australia, so I don't think there'll be much folks here from Australia, but we have a lot of people coming join us from the rest of the world. For your info, this session will be recorded. It will be in YouTube in a short while, and you can always kind of revisit it. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Hope you enjoy the session. Over to you, Nils.
Thank you for the introduction. As Azlam already said, my name is Nils, and the first thing I'm going to do is simply share my screen so that you can see the presentation I have prepared. And thanks for coming from all over the world. Hopefully we got like a good time spot for you besides Australia. We're having a big soccer match right now. And let's directly jump in. As Azlam already told, the topic is today when click meets code, admins and devs without conflicts, or most of the time. At least there are always some conflicts happening. But the first I would like to tell you is like the whole project is currently still in progress. There's a lot of new features which will become in the future, or maybe should become. And maybe at the end, or more in the LinkedIn post directly, I will go through later on through the questions you had all, and yeah, we'll try to answer them if there will be some. So today's agenda will be more like, who am I? Who's Valantic, my company, or the company where I'm working for? How we got things done in the past and how it's now working today. And I hope that will be interesting for you as well. So let's start. Who am I? Who's Valantic? My name is Nils. I'm a senior developer at Valantic 6. I have 2 years of experience in Salesforce, 10 years of development experience in various programming languages with a lot of DevOps topics. And so my main background was more in the PHP world with online shops and all that stuff. And I just came 2 years ago to Salesforce. And for me, it was a quite interesting and also hard journey, because the whole DevOps is working different in Salesforce, I would say, than in other languages, as I know. And that's what you're going to see today. And as I wrote in the top, I'm happy to be here and have the opportunity. But first of all, what's Valantic? Just a short slide. We are in Europe mostly and also worldwide. We have 4 big divisions in different areas with over 1,000 experts to make like the customer experience good for everyone. But I'm located in the customer experience section or division. And the 6th division divides into some parts and like CDP, CAP, and marketing automation, also with Salesforce, CrossEngage, SAP, Bloomreach, and Mazes. And I'm more into the CM part with the Salesforce ecosystem as I said. And yeah, just a short slide. We don't spend any more time on that slide. We can directly go to the next page. how we got things done in the past tense. And maybe you did, because I think most of you started with change sets in the early beginning of Salesforce, as we did. And the old process with changes was hard, I would say, because if you have multi environments for each different stage of your process with the customer or anything like this, you will have like different sandboxes and all that stuff, like a staging dev environment, like a preview instance maybe, or just like a development sandbox as a production environment. And if you are just using change sets, it's really, really hard to get your things done. And because you always need to create a change set, need to select all your features. That's what the admin did in the past at our company, and try to move with that changes to the next environment without any testing, or at least the testing happened on the next org, in the target org. And that was a really, really bad experience and also bad practice, as we know today. We had also a lot of struggle because we didn't have any source control. We didn't have any source of truth. All changes needed to be moved by the admins. And if you go live on a Friday, for example, it makes a really hard time, because you need to move all your changes on the Friday with change sets. And most of the time, because human errors appears over the time, it's like really painful, because the whole deployment process is inconsistent, and every step needs to be done manually. And because of that, most of the other technical solutions in different programming language directly introduced, like a CI system, continuous integration, continuous deployment, to deploy their changes in a consistent way. And after we found out that change sets wasn't the best way, surprise, we tried to move forward and try to implement like the first draw of version control. We didn't use DXScale at that point of time. It was more like, hey, we wanted to use the version control because I knew that tool is like the state of the art in every other IT system to move that changes and to have like a really way of see what changes are coming in the next deployment, what's happened in the background and all that stuff. But because it's like in Salesforce really hard if you don't have like a big team of developers. And the thing is like, admins need to select their changes at some point of time, need to go to the developer and simply talk with them. Hey, we made some changes. Could you please create like a branch, like a feature branch, to where you include all of my changes? And most of the time they missed some. And also like the developer didn't have a clue about, okay, what changes really needs to be pulled, because sometimes if you change one part of Salesforce, another part is directly also changed because it's automatically hidden in the background of Salesforce. And if you don't know that and don't see that at some point, it's a really, really bad experience at some point. And it's like, it was really challenging at that point because it took a lot of time from the developers. It also took a lot of time to communicate with the administrator to get all the changes manually via the developer. And also we tried to use like a comment, maybe you know about that, maybe not, which is called source pull, or was called source pull, to get like all changes from the dev environment, from the dev sandbox, pulled locally. This worked the first time, but if you pull on the second time, you always get a lot of changes. So that also didn't work well. So for that, it wasn't really a good way. After we picked our changes, at least we could add like the feature to a deployment queue, which was then deployed via GitHub and to the next environment. But we still didn't have any scratch org validation or something like this. Like it's more like, hey, hopefully the deployment works. If not, we're going to need to adjust our changes and need to fix it. So wasn't also a good way to deploy on a Friday, I would say. But at least we got now like a source control and move our changes from dev to stage to preview and to the end to the production environment. But wasn't good. And also our repository was quite a mess. It was, as Salesforce calls it, most of the time, like a really, really big happy soup. Maybe you know it, maybe not. But it makes the whole deployment really, really complex. It makes it large. It takes a lot of time. And most of it, if you have like a new developer or new administrator on the project, it's really hard to explain how the project structure is working because there isn't anyone. And it makes really, really hard. And as the title already said, we want to merge the administrators and the developers into one repository and work together and understand the whole project from both sides. And yeah, with that, it was a quite hard experience from our side. Took a lot of time, but it was like the first progress we had, some first way of handling changes to different orgs. And as you see in the slide, if the deployment worked, then we could go forward. If not, we need to fix it. And yeah, at that point, not so good. So that's where we come from. It's not really like an interesting way on that. It's more like we try to find a work of how we can work with our administrators and developers. And I just want to notice you can expect in one project, for example, 5 admins and 1 developers or 1 senior administrators at all. And that's like, there's some guidance needed. They don't have a clue how version control works. They don't know how Visual Studio Code works locally and so on. So that's why we decided there needs to be another way. We need to find like a way how we could keep the admins in Salesforce, but the DevOps can also work together with them. And that's how we got things done now. And I just want to notice, it's still not bad practice. We still work on one sandbox as development environment. I know there's already in DXK the best practice to use scratch-orgs as development orgs and make like one org feature-based. But this resulted in really a lot of merge conflicts. We tried it with the old way and doesn't work for us because, as I said, we have some limited capacity on how our developers are available, and that makes all that process really hard. So that's why we decided to only have one development environment, but working feature-based. So all of the administrators, developers working on one environment and working together on it. We now have like the process that the admin is making his changes on the admin sandbox or the development environment. After that, via the DevOps Center, which I will show later on, he can select his changes, create a pull request or a feature branch in GitHub automatically from Salesforce. And that feature request or pull request is automatically tested via the scratch-org pool from DXScale. And all of these scratch-orgs are based on an org shape, which is built on the production org. So that makes it a lot of easier to work with scratch-orgs. And if we are now facing some issues, the admin can directly see the results and taking care of it, hopefully. If not, he can still ask like the senior consultant or the developer to help him on that and try to solve it. If everything working, we can then merge it into the main branch of our version control. And with that, it's directly getting deployed to our staging sandbox. On the staging sandbox, we then can decide, okay, we're ready for a preview. we are just needing to click one button, and it's everything from the stage environment is directly deployed to the preview instance, and it's building like a release. We then can decide, okay, do we want to skip one release for the production release, or do we completely directly deploy the latest release to production? That's completely automatically handled also by DXScale. And the thing is, like, to give you a better way of what's happening, I will check out now with you like one pass via the DevOps Center for one work item. And just wanted to highlight how the process is working now. For the admin, nothing changed really. He just selects his changes and the DevOps Center retrieved it automatically and create a pull request, which then gets validated in the pipeline. After the validation went successfully, you directly getting feedback from the org. And with that, the administrator can be sure that the deployment is working most of the time, or 99% of the time. If everything working, as I said, we can decide to move it to the next environment and simply could deploy to production. If not everything work, the admin needs to readjust his work item, change it, create a pull request, and repeat the process. But it's now more cleaner. The admin can decide which parts of his metadata needs to be included. And that was the first process. We don't need any developer anymore to pull his changes, to create a feature branch, and also and so on. So it made or gave the developers at least a lot of time. And that's why we are also using the DevOps Center. It's like we have like the DevOps Center on production org, and the main feature we are using from it is simply to add change and remove his changes. So the admin can decide on its own what he needs to be deployed for his feature. There could be also happening review in the DevOps Center or in the GitHub repository, depends on the senior consultant who's taking a look into that. And the developers are just building like a second layer support if something is really broken. And yeah. And that's also like the start point to get all our changes in the version control. Because if you try to pull an existing project from 0 to 100% into the version control, it's really hard. So it always makes sense to do it over the time, create feature requests, and so on. So that's why we use the DevOps Center and also DXScale and version control in the background. So that's how our DevOps Center is looking for most of our projects. Because the DevOps Center also can deploy changes, but we don't need it because we are using DXScale in the background to deploy and package our changes. We simply limit the pipeline in the DevOps Center and made only the dev environment available and the stage environment so that the administrator can create a work item and simply set this work item in review, which then results in a pull request into GitHub. So what would be the way of an admin working in the DevOps Center? Simply open it, create, click on a new work item, write a really nice subject into it and assign it to him. If he did that, he's then getting like a path, as you know, from opportunities already or not, where he then needs firstly to select his development org, which is only one org. So there's a way to support like a multi-dev sandbox feature base, but it's a little bit a struggle with the DevOps Center right now. So that's why we are also using only one sandbox. If he authenticated with the org, he then can click proceed. And after that, directly the changes button appears to pull changes and select his changes. As I did in this screen, I only selected one field, but in the background, I added more and more stuff like a layout, like a permission set. So you can select everything you need for your feature. It's like a list of all features changes happened on the org, and you can filter by your name, for example. And on the bottom, there's like a comment section. With that, the administrator has access to the version control because that comment appears directly in GitHub as commit message. So if you're writing there's something like Jira 00run, then we could use that commit message later on in DXScale to create like a changelog based on that. So it's really, really nice. And as you see on the bottom right, the DevOps Center already created like a branch for us. And you are just now available or got the way off to pull your changes into the branch. And it's still all in Salesforce. So you don't need to jump off to GitHub to Visual Studio Code or something like this. So if the admin committed all his changes, he can commit as often as he wants. He can press in the right top on create in review. And with that, the jump off point to the version control is happened because his feature branch, his work item, his branch is creating a pull request against the main branch. And with that, now the development part or release management part happens because now we got like a pull request in GitHub and simply having like the jump off point to the version control and having like there's a source of truth. It's now validating there and the admin can follow that process in the version control, or there is also like a little feedback in Teams. I will show it later on. And yeah, if everything works, then he's good to go. And maybe you're just wondering because in the beginning, it's like we have like two worlds which we wanted to combine. And most of it, the developers are working like in a module-based working environment locally in their VS Code. They are seeing all the packages. They are seeing like the changes made in the version control history. They're seeing the whole project all at once. The admin by itself don't see anything. He just can select his changes and that's it. And as you see here right now, our new project structure, which we now introduce with our new system, is also like nearly the same as the DXScale default template project is. We have like an environment-specific pre-package, which contains settings, a source core default package, which contains like a lot of metadata from the administrators, which is still at some point a happy soup. So there's still some improvement. We have like an extension package for the developers to write their code in different architectures, like a layered architecture, module base. The developers could also introduce like a new package between here, or at the beginning, it's up to them if they want to make it module based or not, depends on the size of the project. And we have a UI package. So we are bundling our packages and the included metadata by the types. So that's like the simplest way to make our project more module based at some point. And so that the developer could find all his changes. So for example, if the developer would take a search for the layouts, he directly see it in the source UI layout package. Same for Apex classes, for profiles, permission set, and so on. And but the problem is with that, how does the admin sort his metadata into that packages? It's like he don't see any packages in DevOps Center. He only see it in the version control where he don't go in and don't have any interaction with, because we are saying simply, hey, you can stay in the DevOps Center. If you're interested, we're going to show you the version control in the background, but it's not necessary for you because we got like a little tool which sorting all that different metadata by simple rules in the related packages. And if I go to the next page, there will be some introduction how the tool is working. It's like, for example, as we said in the beginning, the end specific prepackage only contains settings metadata. So my tool is directly auto sorting all the settings in that package. Is there a UI package? All the layouts are containing. So layouts are automatically sorted to that, profiles, profile password policies, and so on are moved to the profile package. Permission set groups is moved to the access package, and same for translations. And that was like the first way how we could make at least the project more module-based from the admin perspective, so that the admin could find himself in the project and could make it more understandable. There's still improvement, but that's why it's still work in progress. So as I said, there's like a tool in the background, which is handling like the auto sorting and doing some more stuff, because humans are missing metadata, humans are doing errors, and that's what my tool tries to prevent. It also prepares the version control, the changes for the scratch jobs, and is trying to reduce human errors. And with that, I'm going to jump directly to GitHub, where I prepared like the work item we had in the DevOps center. We can see at the end that we got 6 changes. I added like a permission set, a layout, flow, and also a field. But for example, I missed the object of the field in my first work item. And my tool simply added and completely sorted all the changes into the correct package. So we can have a look into the change. We see like some permission set cleaning is happened. We're seeing like some wrong fields are existing in the layout, which were then removed. For example, we don't have a field called Peter Pan, or a managed field called Peter Pan. My tool detected it and removed it.
Nils, are you sharing some?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I just shared my presentation screen. Sorry for that. I will move to the next screen. Sorry for that. Do you see now my screen?
All good.
Okay. So I will go back. As I said, that's the work item we created in the DevOps center. We committed a lot of different stuff. I removed some subflows, but keep the main flow. I added a field, a layout, and so on. We can have a look into the changes. And the thing is, like, if I take a look into my commit my tool did, we could have a look. And we are just seeing the tool is cleaning some misleading metadata from the permission set. For example, there is no Peter Pan object. There's no layout elements called Peter Pan field or manage Peter Pan. So my tool removed them to prevent errors, because these fields are not existing on the dev org, for example. It's added missing flows. And also added like a missing object. So for example, in my use case, I added a field, but I missed the object of it, which were not already in the repository. So the deployment would have failed if my tool wouldn't add it. So that's what's happening in the background also. And now I will go back to the presentation, and we will have a deeper look into that, what's happening in the background or what happened, because I said we want to reduce like a lot of human errors. And if I had some statistic about that, I had some look into what are the most common or top 10 errors happened because some metadata were missing or simply were wrong or old and so on, and the deployment simply failed. And most of the time, it's in the first top three are like metadata which have a lot of relations. Layout have related fields, has different fields, added quick actions, flows maybe, and that stuff. The flow is quite complex because it's like the way of an administrator can declarative program. And maybe you're just wondering why there's custom field, but I will come later to it. It's like a big overview what the main metadata errors happen from. And if we take a look onto the layout errors, most of the time it's related field missings were not present in the repository. Field missings generally of the object were missing, or package dependency because the package was simply not installed. Same for button missing and other stuff like syntax errors or all that other stuff. And how did we fix it, or how did we prevent some of the errors? Because we did not fix all of them, because related fields missing, for example, are quite hard to solve because they are not written down as API name in the layout XML metadata. You need to query, first of all, an alias table to get like the real names, and that makes it really hard. So the first point of start was more like, okay, let's fix the field missing because it's quite simple. And what we did there is simply, we had to look via regex if the layout was changed. And if the layout was changed and the field was added, we simply check if this field is present on the developer org, if it's installed by a package. If yes, we don't do anything. If it's not installed by a package and is completely custom and it isn't in the repository, then we remove it automatically to prevent deployment errors. Because it could be because we are all working on one sandbox, that this additionally field, for example, is a field from another feature, which simply can happen when you use like one sandbox as a development org. Then I will skip the flow, because on the flow side, it's more like we are just simply adding missing subflows, and that's it. We don't completely understand the logic of the flow if something there is broken. It's more like some simple try to fix most of the deployments error. For the custom field part, most of the time the administrators or developers are missing the object, and the easiest way is simply to add like the missing object and deploy simply the missing object and add it to the repository. Simply by checking, hey, is the object in the repository? If it's installed by a package, if not, then add it to the repository. It's always like a decision, do we want to add the field or do we want to remove the buggy metadata? But for that, we really know, okay, the admin wants to add the field, you also need the object, so that's why we are adding the field, the object. For profiles and custom applications, it was different because custom applications most of the time are linking to profiles, and profiles most of the time are linking to applications. For example, a custom application have like profile action overrides included. And if you don't have the profiles at the time of the deployment in the org, your deployment will fail. So we needed to find a way to have like all the project profiles and the apps already on the org without having them completely filled with the whole logic. And that's why we have a dummy package included or introduced. It's our way how to solve some relations between profiles, applications, and to move the whole profile deployment to the end of the pipeline where all the metadata is already existing. Besides, we don't really want to use profiles. The best practice would be to use permission sets as we are using, but for example, you need like a profile for layout assignments, app assignments, and so on. So there's still no way to don't use profiles. And what is happening if an admin simply updates a profile because he needs some new layout assignments or did some changes on the on an app? And as I said, we have a dummy package. In the dummy package are like empty profiles and empty apps, which are then getting later deployed in the access management profile package completely. but here it's more like some empty stuff of it, only to have like a empty shell. And I can also show it to you how it's looking in the version control. That's our profile, that's our custom application. And the idea is simply, if the admin changes it, DevOps Center simply pulls it into the repository, most of the time in the core default package, but sometimes also in the dummy package, which then would change our dummy files. And my tool simply detects, hey, this file is a dummy file. You don't need to make any changes here. It's more like we want it here to be present that we can deploy changes later on. And my tool simply moves the change from the admin to the correct package and resets the dummy metadata, which then results in that admins don't change any dummy metadata, and we can keep working with our structure, how our whole package process is built. And yeah. With that, one last part is the permission set errors category, which was also quite interesting. And beside in this chart, it isn't that big, but in reality, it's a lot of errors are more related to permission sets than, for example, for custom applications. But for example, if we take a look, permission set errors appear most of the time because of field missings, object missings, same as layouts. And we simply did the same stuff as with the layout. We simply removing the missing metadata from the permission set. Yeah. And as I said in the beginning, at the end of the whole process, the tool is preparing the version control for the validation in the scale. It simply goes through all workflows, removes like the org-wide email addresses. I think all of you will have something like this scripts happening in your pipeline. We have it directly built into the tool. And it's also removing like user shared dashboards or report folders. And because there are no users really on the Scratch org, there's only 3 or 5 users, which are default, and they are not really the real user from the production org. And that's why we needed that. And when the whole validation happened, the administrator is getting feedback because he's seeing like a team message that something is failed because he missed an object. For example, Peter Pan here. My tool is only removing like custom objects, not managed or not Salesforce standard object. For that, I simply adjusted the file that object named Peter Pan existed, which doesn't. And if everything works, he's simply getting like that feedback with a validation successfully message. He can jump off to GitHub to the pull request. And also, if he has some questions, there's also like a FAQ page linked in our company. Yeah, and maybe there to get some results, what happened since the introduction of that tool. We had like a really high failure rate in the beginning, or it's still high, but we got it better. Like 56% or 52% failed every time. And so the validation of the pull request of the change from the admin. And now it's only 42%. And we have like a success rate that 56% of each validation process is running successfully. Besides over the time span where I took my data from, we had the summer release of Salesforce where we had struggled with some new added fields from Salesforce to flows, flexi pages. We deployed new metadata, for example, CM Analytics, Experience Cloud, Consumer Goods Cloud. So a lot of new cases, and we still managed to get like a higher success rate, which is for me quite important. And with that, what could we do in the future? What could be like an improvement? Of course, adding new features to the tool. Find a way to deploy dashboards and reports faster, because currently all the new changes of dashboards and reports needs to go through the whole pipeline, which is really slow and waits for the full release later on. And of course, one big point for me is to get like a feature-based development or working environment for the administrators and developers based on scratchbox or maybe sandboxes. But that's something we need to get more into it, and and also improve the Teams messages to give more feedback, more detailed feedback, because currently the admins simply see errors or the success message, not what my tool did. So it would be a nice feature to add, like, hey, the tool added a missing object, the tool deleted some fields from the permission set, and so on. So that the admin is getting more and more feedback from the whole process. But as I said, work in progress, and that is like the outlook for that. And if you have any questions, you can write it in the LinkedIn event page. I will take a look later on, and that's it. Thank you for your time, and have a good day.
All right.
And thank you, Azlam, for the to have the opportunity to speak here.
Oh, no worries. So thank you, Nils, for sharing your amazing story. And it was pretty amazing. Taking a tool, right, the exit scale, which was clearly aimed at a developer persona, and then extending it to work with a broader admin folks. So can you just elaborate on certain steps, right? How flexible or how easy was it? Or what was your journey like when you want to customize the tooling, right? What did you do? Is it a separate tool? Can you just talk about the process?
So you mean what I need to do to adjust the tool? Okay. It's like an own package written in TypeScript,
Right,
as you did with DXScale. And I could change it, publish a new version to NPM, and simply all the orgs are directly pulling the latest version. And that's how I completely distribute my package to the all of our projects directly on time. And also can try to fix something. And in the background, there's like a config. I really had spent some time with the DXScale tool, which gave me like a first way of, okay, how maybe this could work. And I really spent a lot of time in the DXScale tool at that point.
right. So
And
I think that speaks to the power of open source, right? So when we were designing the tool, we spent a lot of time with the Salesforce CLI. We looked at, because they open sourced it. I think when we were doing it was not fully open source. It was still a dump of an older version, but you could still see the ideas on APIs to call and what to do with it. So I think it just works into the community onto the other side. That's exciting. How, from an extension perspective, right? So if you look at what you want to extend in the DXit skill toolkit, like for example, the notification, that is amazing. Like you're printing notification directly into the Teams. What do you do with it? Like currently we don't have a JSON log output at this stage.
Yeah, that was really interesting, and I know we wrote about that. And the thing is, like, the only way to get the output from SFDX is simply to pass the log output into a file. That's an option, or what I did, because I didn't feel good with that, because I wanted to keep the DXScale pipeline as default as it is. I simply connected to the GitHub API in another step, pull me the log, and with regex, I'm just extracting the errors if there are some, and passing them into the message, which is quite painful because every message looks maybe different, because also the Salesforce error messages are looking different. There's no standard, as I saw. And that's why I also got interacted with you with maybe, hey, couldn't we add like a feature with simply a JSON argument to get your log output into an additional file, which then could be read from my tool. But for now, I will stick to the regex extraction from the log files.
All right, cool. And then can you also brief about the overall experience that your admins faces right now, right? So we understand the process from a project perspective improved, or multiple projects that you're running on, from a fixed rate and everything got improved. But what are their general feeling? Are they happy, or are we releasing more, or are we realizing the value?
So the thing is, like, after we introduced the DevOps Center, it was the first time the admin could do changes without a techie or without the developer. And from that point of time, we got a lot of positive feedback. Still, the DevOps Center was in beta and was a little bit buggy, but they had the opportunity to make changes and also work with the developers together. So now it's more like, hey, the developer simply asking the admin, hey, please create a feature branch and add your changes. I will then getting later on it and add like the backend logic, for example, to it, or maybe adjust something. And it's like they can now work together. Besides, the admin don't jump off from GitHub, from Salesforce to GitHub, and the developer is not really needed to go to the DevOps Center to work together. And they can both work together, and that has a big positive impact on our company. And also, the interesting part I had, as I introduced the feedback via Teams messages, that was like the biggest change for the admins, because it was like the first time they are seeing something from our system back as response. And now they are fixing their own work items. They are fixing their feature branches and simply adding missing metadata and can doing that completely by themselves, only when there are complex errors. And that helped us to reduce a lot the time of a developer is needed, and also reduce a lot of time for the administrator, because he can work parallel on his stuff without having any interaction with somebody else. And that was really, really nice to see.
Cool, fantastic. So I think, that's a fantastic outcome, and I hope you will be able to open source this tooling or integrate back into the core tooling and for everybody to use, because I could see a lot of use cases where we could even reconcile layouts in a top level package, right? So
the idea, sorry for interruptions. The idea was like we thought about to open source the tool, but the thing is like it's really specific to our org use case. But what we would like to do is, for example, to improve with our knowledge from the layout reconsole or the Teams message feedback, to improve the DXScale tool, to make it more like the bigger tool it is current, or make it more better than it is also already, and to give with that away a little bit back to the community and also to you.
Thank you. Thanks again once again. Yeah. So it was amazing talking to you. I think definitely, once we record this event and post on YouTube, I'll share the event. There'll be a lot more questions. And anybody who is listening to this event, please feel free to join the DXScale community who is in Slack. You can interact with Nils in Slack over there. Feel free to DM him. He's always kind of available and roughly hours. So ping him to understand the story. And I think this is very powerful. In many organizations where we are discussing, it's very powerful. A lot of questions have been come back and forth about how to connect DevOps Center or flow into a developer workflow as well as an admin workflow, right? How does it in that ecosystem? I think that's a very powerful story in that regards. All right. Thank you. So I think I'll stop the stream right now. Thanks once again, Nils. Thanks everyone for joining in for today's session. We have a very interesting story coming up in the next month. So stay tuned. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.